You know, people used to call me a lazy bum for staying indoors, not talking to anyone, and just doing nothing all day, but now I'm a model citizen. Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're talking about a topic that I'm sure will interest a lot of you. We're talking about 5 financial goals that you want to achieve when you're in your 20s. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is because I know that a lot of people think that when I talk about how to retire when you're 35 and how to save $1 million, people are like, what are you talking about, man? I don't even have $100. How do you expect me to save $1 million? And now I know this seems kind of like a lofty goal to save up $1 million. So that's why I'm making this video as to what kind of goals you can achieve maybe before you hit $1 million. So before you turn 35 and retire, what are some intermediate goals that you can achieve in the short term? But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Before we get started, you know what time it is. That's right, it's quarantine memes. Let's go. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Anyways, without further ado, let's get started. Now, the first goal that you want to achieve when you're 20 is smashing that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Sorry guys, I saw Graham Stephan do this and it seemed to work out really well for him, so maybe it'll work out well for me as well. In all seriousness though, number one is get out of credit card debt. Now, I know some of you might give me a little bit of hate for this because I realize that some of you are really tight on money and then you have to put some basic necessities like your groceries and whatnot on your credit card. And if that's your situation, I completely understand. And I realize it's a really bad situation to be in. But I think for the vast majority of us, we put a lot of expenses on our credit cards that are just wants and luxuries that we can probably cut out if you really wanted to. And a lot of times we're just wasting our money on credit cards. Now, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I'm actually a big fan of using credit cards just because of the rewards that you can rack up. But what I don't support doing is racking up a lot of credit card debt and a lot of credit card interest. Here in Canada, the typical credit card goes for at least 20% interest per year. So that's incredibly high. Now, if you guys are paying 20% credit card interest, it's just going to be a vicious cycle that your interest is eventually going to rack up faster than you're able to pay it off. And that's a really bad situation. And I would really hate for anyone to finish their 20s and go into their 30s without having paid off all their credit cards and just have that debt burden on them when they're trying to retire early, right? So that's really going to hinder you if you're trying to retire by like 35 or 40, or even if you're not trying to retire early, or even if you're just trying to get to a financially stable place. You really don't want that 20% debt burden on you per year all the time. I'll make another video talking about the benefits of using a credit card and how you should properly use a credit card. But for now, just keep in mind that I want you guys to all finish your 20s without any credit card debt. And I think that that's an achievable goal that we can all hope to achieve. Anyways, that's goal number one. So for goal number two, I put having an emergency fund. Now, I'm going to sound like a broken record on this one, but I really do want to drive home the point that you really do need to have an emergency fund. And the reason for that is obviously because of this crisis that's going on. My point is even more proven, right? So something like this happens and you might get laid off. You might have been laid off already, right? So you might lose your job. You might have to move back in with your parents and have to depend on them for your daily expenses. And sometimes if you don't have anyone to rely upon, then you're really going to have to fall back on yourself. And having an emergency fund at this point is really important for you. So typically I recommend keeping 3 to 6 months of your minimum expenses in an emergency fund. So that'll give you some buffer room to maybe find a new job or just have some time to get back on your feet. So this is, in my opinion, having an emergency fund is so important, and this is the only money that you shouldn't invest. You should just really keep it in a high interest savings account. Keep it in cash, right? So if you need to draw upon it at any point, you're not forced to sell stocks at a loss. Because obviously with the situation like it is right now, I mean, this is probably an emergency for a lot of you, right? So if you're forced to sell stocks or if you're forced to sell your investments because of you lost your job during this current crisis, then you'd probably be selling at a huge loss. And that's something that you never want to do. So if you have any cash left over that you can spend in case of this emergency, then that'll get you a long way in order to become financially independent and at least financially stable. Which brings us to my third point, which is once you have an emergency fund ready, your third goal in your 20s is really to start investing if you haven't already. Assuming that you have an emergency fund saved up already, you should really think about buying some investments. Now, I'm not going to tell you exactly which stocks to buy. This is just for education and entertainment purposes only. This is not financial advice. For financial advice, you should talk to your financial advisor about that. But I think that now in general, it is a great time to start buying some stocks, because if you've been watching any stocks that you're interested in, they've probably come down in price pretty dramatically throughout the past, I don't know, month and a half. I think that if you're thinking about investing, now would be a great time to get started, because you're buying stocks at such a steep discount compared to just a few months ago. And I'm not just talking about stocks. Other things like real estate you could consider as well. Although if you're buying a house, that you may need a little bit more of a startup capital just to get started, but that's something that you can look into as well. I'm not just talking about buying in the stock market in general, right? So you can consider other forms of investments as well. So please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I'll be making more videos about what I'm doing and how I'm buying the dip in the stock market, and how I'm trying to build up my portfolio in order to poise myself to become financially independent. Just a shameless self-plug there. Now, moving on to goal number 4. And goal number 4 is have a side project going. So keep in mind that when I say side project, it doesn't have to make money for you, right? It could be a hobby. So right now, a lot of people are at home, obviously. And if you've been laid off or fired from your job, then you probably have a lot more spare time now than you did just a few months ago. So now I think it's a great time to get started on any sort of side projects or any sort of hobbies that you're interested in that you've been wanting to start, but you haven't had a chance to start. Again, as I said, it doesn't have to make money, right? So for example, what I'm doing is I'm starting this YouTube channel. Now, granted, I started this YouTube channel a little bit before the crisis began, but I think that now that I have more time, because I'm at home all the time, it really gives me a chance to build up this YouTube channel and make more frequent videos and make better videos for you guys. Your goal doesn't have to be a YouTube channel. It could be anything you want, right? I don't know what hobbies you're interested in. You could be interested in, I don't know, basket weaving, for example. Now, no offense to basket weavers if you're a basket weaver. I'm just saying that it could be anything, right? So if your goal is basket weaving, then just go for it. Weave the best baskets you can. You can start an online store on Etsy or something and sell them and maybe make some money from it down the line. But my point is just get something started, right? Don't just sit it by idly even though you have more time, and just get something going that you otherwise would not have really considered. Which brings me to my final goal number 5, which is have a budget. Now, I know this one kind of sounds boring, and to be honest, to begin with, to build a budget, it might be kind of boring. But back to my point about having an emergency fund, I said that you should save 3 to 6 months worth of your expenses in an emergency fund. Now, how do you figure out how much money that is, right? So for that, you need to find a minimum spend. So your minimum burn is what you need to pay for, let's say, rent or mortgage, let's say your food expenses, and maybe your car expenses if you absolutely need a car. So those expenses are something that's fixed and that you need to spend no matter what. And other things like luxuries, like going out to eat or going to see movies or entertainment things, you can maybe cut that down if you're quarantined, for example, or if you've lost your job, or both. So you have to figure out what is discretionary spending, meaning that money that you can cut without suffering too much of a loss in your lifestyle, versus compulsory spending, which is money that you have to spend no matter what, like your rent and your food and stuff like that. So if you boil down your spending to just the compulsory part, you can figure out what's your minimum burn per month, let's say. And then you can use that to figure out how much money you need to save in your emergency fund and how much you should save per month. And put 3 to 6 months of that in an emergency fund. So all of this comes with having a budget. So I can't stress this enough, guys. You need to have a budget. And if you're in your 20s right now and you're just getting started in your journey to retiring early and becoming financially independent, or you just want to save up a bit more money to become a bit more financially free, then you should really have a budget so that you can figure out what you're spending your money on and where it's going, and whether or not you're actually following your goals. So I think that for those of us who are in our 20s, if you boil down those 5 goals, if you achieve all of those, or if you at least get started on all of those, then I think that by the time you hit 30 years old, you'll have a very deep understanding of the way that personal finance works, and you'll be well on your way to retiring early. So yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Make sure to hit the like button if you haven't already, and consider subscribing if you like this series. Make sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I'll leave the links down below in the description as always. And with that, I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.